And we'll start in 3, 2.
Welcome to Urbana Chat. Today we welcome Will Reger, the inaugural Poet Laureate for the city of Urbana. Hi, Will.
Hi, how are you doing?
Will, tell us a bit about your background.
Well, I was born and raised around the St. Louis area, so I sort of have this connection from the beginning of my life to the prairie, the river area.
Oh, sure, yeah.
And I grew up in Illinois, although I spent some time in Missouri.
Yeah.
And went to school, got married, had 4 children, and in the course of all of that wrote a lot. Not so much while I was married and raising kids, but certainly beforehand. I grew up as a teenager thinking I would be a poet when I grew up.
Oh.
And Donald Hall, who was a famous poet, had the same sort of experience. He was a little weirder, I think, as a child. He decided that being a poet meant he had to wear a cape to school. I did not wear a cape to school, but...
And that's probably good as far as bullying goes and stuff.
Right. Yes.
You are a professor at Illinois State University.
Yes.
So, I mean, you obviously didn't just go the whole full-on poet route.
No.
How did you?
Somewhere along the line, my parents, I guess, convinced me I needed to do something more reasonable than be a poet.
Yes.
And push come to shove, I found I was good at languages, but what can you do with a language except teach a language or work for the government? Neither of those were really palatable to me, so I went into history as a way to use my language skills.
That's wonderful.
And so I teach, my area of expertise is medieval Russia.
That's very poetic, actually.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes,
it's kind of like you
very
keep going
snowy.
back to the poetic sort of thing. But being a poet was kind of like your first dream, and you just kept coming back to it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so obviously to become our inaugural Poet Laureate, you had to be a renowned poet. So how did you become a poet?
Well, I don't know if I'd say I was renowned, but...
So I think somewhat around here you are. So what was your path?
Well, I became aware of the possibility, but I wasn't too keen on the idea of applying because I knew in my heart of hearts that there would be a lot of this sort of public stuff.
Oh, I see.
So I still am kind of a private person, not really comfortable in the limelight. But Rachel Storm convinced me that I should apply to the what would you call it, a competition or something like that? I don't know. It was there was an application, I filled it out, I wrote an essay, and I sent it in, and I heard nothing else for months, it seemed. And I kept looking on the Google, you know, who is the Poet Laureate of Urbana?
Right.
And there was never anyone. And then suddenly I was called
and it's you.
It was me, yes. That was quite a shock, pleasant shock.
For others that are artists, I mean, you've hit on 2 things. One is you're encouraged not to do it because you're probably not going to make a living at it. I mean, I've experienced that myself. And then another is you'd like to do your craft, but because we're often sensitive people, artists are, they don't like the limelight. Most artists really don't. But I'm thinking that it's good that you're here today because you're going to encourage others. And so sometimes your example, the way you live your life, it just speaks volumes.
Right.
So I'm glad you are here, and I thank you for that.
It has given me the insight, perhaps, that there is always going to be a public portion to the private writing.
And it encourages others, which that's a great legacy, you know?
Yeah.
Tell me, what is the process that you use to write poetry? What's your poetic process?
Well, it starts with a word, and that word can come from any place, really. And
It just pops up?
Quite a bit, and so I write words down, words that fascinate me, and then words come together with words, and soon I have a line, and then that suggests another line and another line, and the scribbling is intense. There's a lot of marking out as I try for the right sound.
Okay, so how has your experience been thus far?
Well, it's been transformative, I think. being the Poet Laureate has given me a new perspective on the way that literature works, the way that poetry is valued. And I've been able to meet a lot of great people, and
That's cool.
that was sort of one of my goals, was to try to blend some of the writing communities. And I'm very pleased that in the coming Poet Laureate Showcase, we're going to have a wide variety of poets that have not been necessarily active together. And I like that idea, that there's a diversity here, that they're all coming together, and this reading will be, you know, powerful.
I know they're going to pick up something that they're going to take away, you know,
Right.
at least one thing, if not more. You're in the midst of your tenure as Poet Laureate, but what are some highlights thus far that you'd like to share?
There are a lot of different things that we've been able to do. I think the one I've had the most fun with is working with the writers of Oya. This is a writing group for young ladies, and they're very energetic, and their writing is very positive, sort of declarative writing about being strong, having strength, and being true to yourself, that sort of thing. I've only worked with them once, but in that one little moment, you know, it was very enjoyable to be associated with them. And also, in addition to that, we've got a number of things going on. Poets on the Park Bench is another
very cool. Yes,
program that I've really enjoyed doing. We had 5 interviews in the late summer, and we're hoping to do maybe 5 more in the spring. So it's a chance for poets to lay out what it is they do and how they're motivated and what they write about.
Oh, that's great. So what can we look forward to as you progress through your tenure and beyond?
Well, I have 2 things, really big things, that I'd like to accomplish in the coming months. I'm working with the high schools.
Oh, that's great.
And I hope to have a workshop, poster contest, or really it's more of a postcard contest, and then also a reading that will hopefully tie those 2 events together.
That's great.
And then the big thing we're doing is the Veterans Project. We're going to meet with veterans who are, I guess, identified as wounded physically or psychologically, and we're going to try to use poetry in a way to help them deal with their
that's
problems
awesome.
and write, you know, for their own benefit and advantage.
That's going to be really cathartic. I love that.
Yes, I'm working with Nia Klein, who is a therapeutic writer. She works with children as a tutor now, but she was at Parkland, and she is going to be the sort of leader of that group. I'm going to be her support, and you know, put in ideas as necessary about how to do a certain kind of poetry or whatever.
So, Will, if you could give advice to some person that's out there and they fancy themselves a little bit of a poet and they would like to write poems, what advice would you give them?
I would say go out and buy one of these somewhat expensive but very nice notebooks, and get yourself a good pen or pencil if you like that, and just write. And then you can learn forms and read other poets and get ideas for how to start, how to stop, how to move through an idea, sustain a metaphor throughout the poem.
Your idea with the word, that's kind of neat.
Yeah.
And they could do something like that. Well,
Yeah.
thank you. Thank you for being with us today. We totally
you.
appreciate it. And thank you, Urbana, for watching Urbana Chat.